So in a previous episode, we showed you how to work with functions, and those are great, but something I think is even nicer than that and more efficient is macros. A lot of people have an aversion to using them because there is a little bit of a learning curve on them. If you've got someone that can write macros for you, one thing that's really handy is at least learning how to create a macro-enabled spreadsheet, and depending on what type of organization you're in and how your company sets up security and so forth, you may need to actually learn how to put the text in yourself as opposed to someone emailing you a macro-enabled spreadsheet. Some companies' corporate security policies prevent that from going through their email system. Most companies that I know of would at least allow macros to be run locally by yourself. So what we want to do is we want to take a normal Excel worksheet or workbook. In this case, book 1, I've just created it. There's nothing special about it. And the first thing we want to do is we want to resave it. So we're going to come over here and File, Save As. And in this case, I'm just going to put it on my desktop. And we want to come down and pick Excel Macro Enable Workbook. And then click Save. There we go. Now the next thing we want to do is, if you're going to be putting macros in yourself, whether you're trying to learn how to do it or whether someone else is giving them to you, I find that leaving the developer tab up here is very handy and expeditious. So I'm going to go ahead and enable that, show you how to do that. Come down to Options. And we want to look for Customize Ribbon. We've got that. And then over here in the ribbon area, we want to look for Developer. And we want to click that checkbox right there. And click on OK. Now if you'll notice up here in the menu bar, we have Developer. This allows us to do a lot of the things with custom forms, but we're not going to get into that right now. What we actually want to be able to do is come over here to Visual Basic. And this is the editor for being able to paste in macros if someone else gives them to you, or if you're writing them on your own. First thing we need to do is we actually need to create a module. So we'll come over here and we'll right click, Insert Module. Now what the modules allow you to do is, if you've got a lot of macros and you can kind of group them together. So if you had macros that specifically dealt with changing the text of a cell, you could create a module for that. You could create a second module if they specifically dealt with changing numbers in a cell or something along those lines. For better or for worse, I tend to put everything into one module. That way I can find it, because one of the nice things is once you've got some macros in here, you can come over here and when you down click right here, the actual macro name will show up and you can it'll take you straight to it. So in this case, what we want to do is we actually want to put our first macro in here. And instead of spending all the time, actually I misclicked there, spending all the time retyping this, I'm just going to paste it in, and then I'll explain what it does. So to start with, when we do macros, you open it up with either sub or function, depending on whether we're going to be writing a function or whether we're writing an actual, I technically call the subs the macros, and we'll end it with a sub. So for example, if we come down here and you type sub macro, hit enter, and it's going to automatically put the end sub for you on there for you. You can just insert the stuff in the middle. So just kind of get rid of that at the moment. Kind of explain what's going on. So in Visual Basic, they use the keyword dim, which is, I think it's short for dimension, and it allows us to tell the program that we want to use a particular variable as a particular type. So in this case, temp string is going to be defined as a string, and the string just simply being a collection of characters, A, B, C, D, numbers, and so forth. Next, we want to define a range, and I'm just kind of using a short notation here, RNG1. And what a range will do is a range simply keeps track of your how many cells are grouped together. So the next, what we want to do is we actually want to set the value of range, application.selection, and what that's going to do is grab anything that the application has selected and store it in range. Next, and this is pretty common for most languages, we're going to set up a for loop. In this case, we're going to say for each x that's in the range, in other words, for every cell that we have selected, we want to do what's in between the for each and the next statement. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the value, extract the value from x, and we're going to store it into temp string, which in this case, when we first run through it, it's going to be server 1. And then we want to apply the trim function to that value. In this case, server 1 would be stored in temp string. And then the results of that call to trim are going to be stored back into x, in other words, back into A2, and then we're going to loop. So if you look really close over here, what you see is on the third cell here, we've got a space before the server. And so what this is going to do, there's two ways to take care of this. I'm actually going to go ahead and save this. You can press the F8 key, or you can just simply run it from here. Or F5 will run it from here. F8 will loop through it. So I don't have anything selected, so let's come over here and select. We're going to come back to Visual Basic. F8 for stepping into it. And since I'm doing this on a Mac, my keys aren't quite working as I expected to, so I can come over here and click this again. And the debug function is going to step through the macro to show you actually what's happening one thing at a time. And just to show you what's going on here, if you highlight the particular variable, you just mouse over the variable, it's going to show you what it had done, or what's stored in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the little guy here to continue, and it'll finish the whole macro for me. So now what it's done is it's finished running through all of these cells, and you'll note that C3 now is actually the space that was in front of that word server has been stripped out. It also, trim also strips the spaces on the end as well. So with that done, we've got the major steps out of the way on setting up a workbook where you can actually do macros. Over the next couple of videos, we're going to be using this type of format a lot, where we're just going to really kind of change the name of the method, and also change what we're doing to the actual value that we're extracting from X. For example, changing this to uppercase or lowercase or other functions along those lines. So this is a handy little skeleton to kind of keep around. It allows you to iterate through a particular range of cells. So we want to go ahead and hit save on that again. You can close the editor window out here. Come over back here to home, and just for safe keeping, we'll go ahead and save. We'll hit save again, save there, and then we've got it. So in the next episode, what we're going to go ahead and do is show you how to take that macro we just wrote and add an item up here in the bars so that you can click it to make it happen, as opposed to having to come over here and say developer, and then select your text, and then click on macros, and then say run. So as always, stay curious and keep learning.